Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotisha Shishmat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, text number 1. Maitreya Uvacha Sat Sevaniyaha Bata Purvamshaha Yat Lokapalaha Bhagavat Pradhanaha Babhuvita Iha Ajita Kirtimalam Pade Pade Nutanayasi Abhikshnam Maitreyovacha Satsevaniyo Bata Puruvamsho Yalokapalo Bhagavat Pradhana Babhuviti Hajita Kirtimalam Pade Pade Nutanayasya Bhikshnam Maitreyo Vacha Satsevaniyo Bata Puruvamsho Yallokapalo Bhagavat Pradhana Babhuvitiha jitakirtimalam. Pade pade nutana yasya bhikshnam. Maitreyo vacha. Satsevaniyo batapurvamsho. Yallokapalo bhagavat pradhanah. Babhuvitiha jitakirtimalam. Pade pade nutana yasya bhikshnam. Mataji? Maitreya Uvacha. Sri Maitreya Muni said, Sat Sevaniyaha, worthy to serve the pure devotees. Bata, oh certainly. Puru Vamshaha, the descendants of King Puru. Yet, because Lokapalaha, the kings are Bhagavat Pradhanaha, chiefly devoted to the personality of Godhead. Babhuvita, you are also born. Iha, in this, Ajita, the Lord who is unconquerable. Kirtimalam, chain of transcendental activities. Pade pade, step by step. Nutanayasi, becoming newer and newer. Abhikshnam, always. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You were also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. The great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious, because they were not attached to the impersonal Brahman or to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. They were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura to be most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Vakanatam Vitam Tam Jivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishaka Anvidhamshta. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranama Mihare Priye Vanchakapatu Vishta Kripasindu Bivacha Patitanam Pamnebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Tulishmati Bhaktivikasa Swamin Itinamane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Tulishmati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Prasharne Nirvishesha Shunivari Pashkyati Adishitarne Bhutir Mahadbiri Mafpur Vibor Nirmaya Shiti Yet Amushi Purushaha Bung Digunan Shodasha Shodashatmaka Solang Shishta Bhagavan Vashamsime. So the translation once more. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You were also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. So, there's a few points here. So Maitreya, I'll just give an overview of what happened and what's going to happen, because we finished the chapter, and this is the first verse of chapter 8. So, chapter 7, largely, obviously Vidura is approaching Maitreya to inquire about the Paramstanam, the highest transcendental knowledge, that the Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan. Specifically, Maitreya wanted to know from Uddhava, but Uddhava redirected him to approach Maitreya, and then Vidura approached Maitreya, and then he inquired about the creation, and we discussed about that a little bit. There was Vidura's talks in Maitreya. Last chapter, there was there's the universal form as well, some section on that. And then, last chapter was basically just a bunch of questions by Vidura to Maitreya. Practically the whole chapter was just that until the final verses where he's glorifying Maitreya Muni. And then here, this chapter is called, by the way, Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So Maitreya is then glorifying Vidura. And what will happen in this chapter, Vidura asked a bunch of questions, a whole chapter worth of questions. Some are answered systematically, and some not so. Maitreya, he begins by reciting what he says in the next verse. I won't speak on it because that's a separate verse, but he says, let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavad Purana. That comes in the Sanskrit, Bhagavatam Puranam, that he says to Vidura that formerly all the Sanat Kumaras, they asked the same questions to Lord Sankarshan. And then Lord Sankarshan, he narrated to them the Bhagavad Purana. So Maitreya, he received that same Bhagavad Purana in disciplic succession, and he's again speaking that same Bhagavad Purana. So he begins from the beginning, namely the manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu, as this chapter is called, which we already heard about, but we'll hear about in a different angle and more details. Brahma's manifestation is described a little bit, mainly his being lost in the darkness, and then him executing austerities, him going down the lotus, which we've already heard about in the second canto, executing austerities. And then we'll hear in the next chapter, Brahma praying for creative powers. Brahma's prayers for the creative energy, which is a very nice chapter. So this is what's going on, basically, kind of an overview of what's happening. So here, Maitreya, so Vidura is glorified Maitreya and asked a bunch of questions. Maitreya is, in turn, glorifying Vidura because Vidura is glorious. It may seem, in other words, it's not so strange, actually. There's many nice points to the Sanskrit of this verse, but first, that he's glorifying him by the words here, Satsevaniyo. They're worthy to serve the pure devotees, which is indicative of a good quality. Normally, if you praise somebody, you say you're very learned, you're very scholarly, you're very handsome, you attribute one of the 6 opulences to them, and you harp on that. But here, Maitreya is saying that you're worthy, your qualification, your glory is that you're worthy to serve the pure devotees. And that's coming from, it says, Bhatta, he's like exclaiming that, you're very worthy to serve the pure devotees. Why? Because you're born, Purvamshaha, you've appeared, Iha, in this Purvamshaha, who are all great devotees. We see elsewhere in the first canto, when Maharaj Parikshit, it's not just in other words, a empty glorification, rather it's a real glorification. Sometimes there's, in the material world, in modern society, we have just sort of, what do you call that? Flattering someone. He's not being flattered here. In the first canto, Maharaj Parikshit, in the 17th chapter, when he's on tour, touring all over the world, and sort of just ensuring that everything's going on nicely in his kingdom, we have a description there, Maharaj Parikshit being with his retinue, and then he would hear at night, when he would stop his party, he would hear at night the glories of his own family. And Srila Prabhupada writes there that it wasn't just for self-aggrandizement, rather, he wanted to hear the glories of his family because his family are great devotees. And he himself felt fortunate to have appeared in such a family. So Vidura was fortunate to have appeared in such a great family of devotees, the Puru dynasty. So, Bhagavat Pradhanaha, why? Because they're chiefly devoted to the personality of God. They're devotees. Real glory, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he spoke to Ramananda Roy, real glory or real fame is one who is famous as a devotee. So the most famous dynasties of this world aren't those who have conquered the world. Hardly any has actually conquered the world. Actually, they had. Just like Puru dynasty, they were controlling. Similarly, Parikshit Maharaj, he was also controlling the world, but his fame isn't necessarily because he controlled the world. Rather, his fame is because he was a devotee of the Lord. We have instances of more petty kings, just like we have, for example, Maharaj Prataparudra, who was historically, he was a big man, or a Rissa, you can say, and within the history of India, you can take it, he may be quite significant, but he's just, politically speaking, he's one amongst many different kings in India. But he's remembered by us, and he's known probably much more than any other rulers of the time. Why? Because he's a devotee. His glories are eternal. We had yesterday in the purport, in one of the purports, the charity of Maitreya will not only help Vidura, but due to its universal nature, will deliver all others in all times. Thus, Maitreya is immortal. So a devotee is immortal. He himself is immortal because he never dies. And he's immortal in the sense that here we have the word kirtimala. His kirti or his glories are also immortal. Just like our spiritual master was making the point in a recent lecture that on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance day, I think, appearance or disappearance day, that Sir John Anderson, who was the governor of Bengal during the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bengal today is different from Bengal then. Bengal then was a presidency and it encompassed North India and also the sort of like, I guess you could say, the eastern coast of India, as well as I think some parts of Assam, etc., like that. So it was pretty big, actually. You can imagine if you take the whole tract of North India, which includes things like Delhi, etc., you combine them with Bengal, which was the most prominent the most, you could say, important area of India then. And then also some parts of Orissa. There's a huge tract of land, actually. It's a very important part of India. And he was, this gentleman, Sir John Anderson, he was the governor of such a region. And later, he also earned honors in England itself. He almost became to be the successor, what do you call that, the Prime Minister of England during the Second World War. There was talk of him becoming that. Churchill himself nominated him for that position. So a pretty big guy, you know. So nevertheless, we have very few people have any idea who he is. I didn't know who he was. I have some idea of history, even history during the Second World War. I know some things about. But he's just some sort of insignificant politician now that just served in the British Empire, more or less. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's much more remembered. And why? Not necessarily because he was so popular during the day, but because he's a devotee. Devotees, I mean, even if you look at Gaurkishore Das Babaji, who is he in terms of political influence or even fame? Hardly was he known outside of Gaudiya circles, and even Gaudiya circles, those Gaudiya circles within Navadvip and maybe Vrindavan itself. But now he's famous all over the world because he was a devotee. So devotee's fame is much, 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 much more than any fame of a materialist, and it lasts. The fame of a materialist, it's temporary, obviously. We have, just as Sir John Anderson's fame was temporary, so similarly to all material fame, it has a beginning and an end. But a devotee's fame has no end. It carries on eternally. So, other points here. So Maitreya is glorifying Vidura. The guru is glorifying the disciple, interestingly. But it's not out of place. We see this. Disciple does something nice, or he makes some good inquiry, and the spiritual master glorifies him. It's natural. We see this in the Bhagavatam, that Shukadev Goswami in the second canto, he congratulated Maharaj Parikshit for his relevant inquiries, which point to something about. Anyway, the import of it is that which are relevant for all human beings. We see this theme again and again throughout the Bhagavatam. So similarly, too, when a disciple does good service, he's glorified by the spiritual master, because the spiritual master becomes pleased. So Maitreya here is pleased by the inquiries of Vidura. He's pleased that Vidura is approaching him with such nice inquiries, and he says, not just for himself, as we made the point before, Vidura is inquiring for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. So Maitreya is happy to see that he may even understand, being the spiritual master, he can understand that Vidura knows these things, but Vidura is inquiring out of a sense of duty and out of a sense of compassion for others, to enlighten others. So Maitreya is happy to see this. Maitreya himself is natural. This is his inclination, as Vidura spoke yesterday, that he is, or a few days ago, Maitreya himself, he's inclined he's the friend of all. He's inclined towards those, he's friendly towards those who have lost their vision. So Maitreya, naturally, he would be happy to see Vidura also develop such qualities. So he's glorifying him in this manner. It's not unnatural. We see Srila Prabhupada similarly glorified his disciples in so many ways. Even as gurus, Srila Prabhupada sometimes saw his disciples as gurus, as his own gurus, inasmuch as he considered that his spiritual master had sent his disciples to him. So it's not uncommon, and it's quite common in a guru-disciple dynamic. So his family glories were therefore glorious because they were not attached to the impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead. So just the same point. And because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. So because his family did, Vidura also naturally did it. Vidura was interested in spreading the top, because Vidura's family, his genealogy, had spread the glories of the Lord, so similarly too, Vidura did the same thing. As the father does, so the son also does. It's very natural. It's not that you can, how to say, I just read something the other day. you can't expect this aroma. In other words, a tree of chandan, chandan scent, it yields more trees that also yield that same chandan scent. So similarly too, the spiritual master or father too, we can take it like that, his offspring naturally become like him. They're one and the same. So Vidura is taking up the same thing. And he, both in regards to Maitreya, imbibing the qualities of Maitreya, and imbibing the qualities of his family, naturally the disciple becomes like the guru. Naturally the son becomes like the father. It's natural. And he was engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Actually, there's a very nice word here in the Sanskrit, kirti malam. I was just looking. I'm just looking at the Sanskrit. Give me one sec. Yeah, I don't understand the beginning of it, but this kirti malam is a pretty easy word. It's very nice. Mala means like garland, just like this, and kirti means like glory, something like that, fame. So a garland of glories. Srila Prabhupada gives the translation chain. You can also take it like that. Chain of transcendental activities. So speaking about the personality of God, he has a chain or a garland of transcendental, his lila, his transcendental activities, or transcendental glories. And what are they? Pade, 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 pade. In every step, they're becoming newer and newer, nutanayasi, becoming newer and newer, abhikshanam always. So Krishna is ever, ever new, ever, ever fresh, and everything about him is ever new, ever fresh. We hear this often. I mean, this Nava Yovanam is a famous verse from the Brahma Samhita. It's so nice. We're always looking for something new. Everybody in the world is looking for the newest thing, latest thing. But within Krishna consciousness is newer than even the newest thing. It's so new, it's beyond new. It's more new than anything in this material world. Because as soon as something in this material world is made, immediately it starts to lose its newness. Say, just like I think now they're coming out with some new iPhone or something. So iPhone 16 is made. Immediately it starts to become, from day one, it becomes old. As soon as something is born, immediately it begins to deteriorate. Just like Srila Prabhupada would say in reference to children, immediately after birth, they begin to age. Immediately, they're ticking down their days to their death. This is the unfortunate situation in the material world. So immediately, in the material world, with newness is born oldness, or just like with birth comes death in this material world, with newness also becomes staleness, you can say. And what is new becomes stale. But in Krishna consciousness, it's not like that. It's completely transcendental to any sort of mundane conceptions of newness. It's ever new. It's not only ever new, continuously new, it becomes newer and newer and newer and ever more fresh. It's something we don't have experience in the material world. In the material world is exactly the opposite. We get something, it becomes more and more hackneyed. There's a word like that. It becomes more and more stale and becomes sick of it. If we do the same thing every day, if there's this word rut in English, that you get stuck in a rut. Rut, what is a rut? You do the same thing every day. You get fed up with it, basically, more or less. A rut, a routine, when you do it long enough, it just becomes a rut, more or less. Why? Just time. The material world is like that because material activities are disgusting. And we gradually become disgusted with material activities. And when we become so disgusted with some activity, when the pleasure gets dried up from it, then we move on to something else, looking for something new like that. So we're always looking for something new, but that new thing we're looking for is not in this material world. That new thing we're looking for is in Krishna consciousness. And it will blow our mind how new it is. So, Krishna is ever new. He does ever new things, just like... he acts in ever new ways. He has a personality, but he is not stereotyped. He acts. His personality is ever new. His dress is ever new. His activities are ever new. His topics about him are ever new. Everything is ever new. Nothing becomes stale. Krishna consciousness is not like that. There's no idea of staleness in Krishna consciousness. There's always something to both in terms of Krishna consciousness, everything related to Krishna. Krishna and Krishna consciousness, sorry. There's always something to do in Krishna's service. There's always something to learn. There's always something to improve in. There's always something newer and ever fresh in Krishna consciousness. There's always some fresh challenge in Krishna consciousness to rise and meet. Always some sort of new venture that is available, just like so many different things. Here, practically, just like, for example, it's a new season. A new season has come, so it means new activities, it means new book distribution venues. It means now we have a garden that's coming up because the season is appropriate. Our spiritual master is coming, so things are changing there. There's continuously new festivals throughout the calendar year. There's always new items to cook, new things to learn, new verses to learn, new bhajans to sing, new mridanga beats to know. There's a verse glorifying the mridanga. Namo Brahmana Rupaya Ravana Rasamaduri Sahasra Guna Samyuktam Sahasra Guna Samyukta. The mridanga is mridanga Namo Namaha. The mridanga is an instrument, and it's samyukta, it's equipped, you could say, with what? Sahasra Guna. Thousands and thousands and thousands of very sweet beats. So there's so many tunes to learn, there's so many mridanga beats to learn, there's so much to do in Krishna consciousness. This is unlimited. Krishna consciousness is unlimited. We have here Satsevaniyo, worthy to serve the pure devotees. And that service, that seva, is unlimited. There's no end to that service. Vidura's dynasty, his whole dynasty, has been serving the personality of Godhead, and that service hasn't ended. In the material world, you can only serve a person so much. A person can have only so many servants until it becomes impractical, because there's only so much to do for a single person. A king, even if somebody's a king, how much can you do for that king? Only so many people can be, just like now, to get into modern affairs a little bit. So they're downsizing the American government because at least they perceive they don't need all these people. There's only so much you can do in a government to run the government until you start creating things which is just unnecessary. And then when you get to the king's service himself, how much can you do for one person, you know? He only has one set of laundry to do. He only eats a certain amount of times a day. You can only massage him so much until he gets sick of it. There's only so much service you can render to a particular person. But Krishna is not like that. He's unlimited. His service is unlimited, and there's no competition for his service. In the material world, people become, even in terms of service, so-called service, people are envious over other people's service to others in this material world, just like we have, so many things. Somebody does something for somebody. You could take it in relationships, just like people cheat in relationships. So one person wants to serve, say a woman wants to, say a man is married, he has a wife, and another woman, she's desirous of having that husband as her own husband. Why? She wants to serve him. Ultimately, she wants to serve his own senses, but she's desirous of that service in one way or another, at least in a perverted form, but that service is taken. So similarly, if you see in the work life, somebody has some position, somebody's working some job, only so many people can be a manager, only so many people can be high up in the corporate ladder, which is a service in some perverted way. So the service in the material world is limited. There's only so much service you can do, and if that position is taken, that position is taken. But in Krishna consciousness, it's not like that. Krishna has a mother, Mother Yashoda. Actually, Krishna has multiple mothers, Devaki as well. But all the older gopis of Vrindavan, they're also considered as Krishna's mothers, etc. like that. So although everybody has their own unique role, nevertheless, it's one service. It can't be taken by others in Krishna consciousness. So, big difference between the two. And that service, as I was making the point, is always fresh. There's always something to do, always something new to do. And even if there isn't something new to do, even if we're doing the same thing every single day, which we do, most of us, some of us were doing new things. All of us are doing. There's new engagements, but we do the same things every day. We go to the same morning program every single day, at least. We eat at the same time every day. We rest roughly at the same time every single day. Most people do that, but we don't feel any sort of fatigue in doing so. Just like I was speaking about this rut, we have this morning program, but it never becomes a rut. You see devotees who have been engaging for decades, their schedule, at least from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, is the same thing. They wake up at 4, they go to Mangalarti, they chant the japa, with some variation here and there. They go to Darshan Arti, Guru Puja, sitting for Bhagavatam class, etc. like that. Same thing every single day, and they don't get sick of it. But materialists, you see that they do the same thing every day. They get sick of it, even if it's sense gratification for them. Even if they're having the same sense gratification every single day, they get sick of it. Whereas we don't. We have the same prayers. Every single day we recite the Gurvashtaka in the morning. But there's an ever new meditation. Ever new insights are gleaned from that. So many different prayers we're singing. The names of Krishna, Jai, Radha, Madhava, etc. like this. Glorifying Srila Prabhupada during Guru Puja is the same thing, but it's different every single time. Every single kirtan, even though the words are the same externally, it's different. It's ever new and ever fresh. We read even the same books, just like, we've heard, probably most of us, we've read this chapter before in the Bhagavatam. We've heard the same philosophy. It's the same points. But it's new, and yet it's different points, and yet it's ever fresh. It's the same kirtans we sing, it's the same Hare Krishna mantra we chant, but it's imbued with transcendental potency. So it's not anything like anything of the material world. Srila Prabhupada, he would often offer the example of Coke. You chant Coca-Cola, 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 Coca-Cola. You get sick of it immediately, but Hare Krishna is nothing like that. And even prasad, what we take in one sense, there's unlimited varieties of prasad. There's so many items to make, and we hear about that, what Krishna would take, Lord Chaitanya would take, the different varieties that are described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the feasts described there. Even within our own temples, there's so much variety. There's so many different sweets, and even the sweet itself, you take one, just like sandesh, there's so many varieties of sandesh itself. There's so many ways you could steam it, you could cook it, you could just not even do anything with it. You could just strain the cheese and just press it like that. That's also fine. There's so many ways to prepare even one item. But in one sense, it's largely the same. We're having rice, dal, sabji, sometimes chapatis every single day. It's largely the same. But it's ever new and ever fresh. So there's no staleness in Krishna consciousness. There's no staleness or stagnancy or complacency. Not exactly complacency, but this feeling of things getting dry or boring. There's no sense of boredom in Krishna if we're following properly. There's emotion of boredom. Practically, it doesn't exist in Krishna consciousness. A devotee has no idea of boredom, at least in sense of. For the most part, you could qualify it like that, but for the most part, this idea, it has no interest in devotional service. Everything is new. Everything is lively. The temple itself is lively. Even though within the temple, what's going on is the same thing every day, morning program, some places evening program. Even the deity worship, if you see deity worship, the timings are fixed. It's highly rigid. But the temples are alive. The deity himself is alive. Is Krishna himself. It's so nice. So that's to give a purport. In other words, these ever new transcendental pastimes. Within the first canto, we hear the sages of Naimisharanya. They speak this verse. Vayam tu na vitripyama uttama shloka vikrame yashtrinvatam mrsakyanam svadu svadu pade pade. The same thing comes here, pade pade, kirtimalam pade pade, nutte, etc. like that. So here, in the first canto they're speaking, we never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who's glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing his pastimes at every moment, like Vidura is doing here, like Maitreya is also doing here. Even though Maitreya is speaking, he's also hearing himself speak, and he's relishing that. It's amazing, actually. Generally, people don't relish their own. We don't hear, for example, somebody recording some speech and then playing it back to themselves and thinking, oh, what a nice speech I gave. But even when speaking, Maitreya is only speaking because it's topics of the Lord and he's not personally speaking. Krishna is speaking through him. It's relishable. And it's increasingly relishable. So topics of Krishna consciousness, they're increasingly relishable. I was making this point about the books. We read the same books even. We have the same books. There are only Srila Prabhupada made so many different books, and it takes a while even to read those books. But you come to the point where you stick around long enough, you've read all those books. And then you read all those books again. And you hear the same things over and over again. Even within the purport, some things are repeated. But the books are alive. It's not like the mundane, trash-like, crow-like literature of this material world where it's just, even before you finish the book. I had one book. It was some grammar book I was going through. It was so terrible, and the language was so terrible, I couldn't even stomach to finish the book. It was such a terrible book. But these books you can read over as just one among many. I hear many people, they start reading a book, they stop. They don't finish it, whatever book it may be, grammar, or even a storybook. Or a storybook means some fiction book, some entertainment. They don't even finish it because the taste, it just dries up in the process of trying to relish it. But these books are not like that. We're reading these books, and sometimes I think, I'm reading some section. I'm like, wow, I can't wait to read the section again when I read the book again. It's so nice. It becomes ever newer and newer and newer. And the more we become acquainted with these books, the more relishable the books become. Just like now, the first time we read through the Bhagavatam, we get some sort of idea. Largely, we may be bewildered, but nevertheless, it's very nice. Second time, we can understand what's going on. Third time, it's even more relishable. Similarly, Chaitanya Charitamrita. You hear about so many devotees in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and when you read it again, you get more insights. You understand who these people are, their role, and then you read it again, you understand more and more and more and more. It's increasingly relishable, and you get more and more insights into Krishna's Leela, his pastimes, and Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. And also by hearing descriptions of one other thing here, I was seeing as I was reading this verse, Vidura specifically, he says, it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord have become newer and newer at every moment. So undoubtedly, Krishna's pastime, his Leela is ever new, but Maitreya specifically, he's saying here, because of your attempt, I suppose, to know them, to understand them, or whatever, his inquiries, they're becoming newer and newer. So not only are Krishna's pastimes newer and newer, the devotees, they also make those pastimes even more new and even more relishable. It's understandable, just like you can read the Bhagavatam, but reading the Bhagavatam and reading Srila Prabhupada's purports, I was just seeing something yesterday from, I guess, I'm on this canto, maybe I can find it, it's around this section, sorry, give me 1 second. If I can find this, it would be nice. So there's this. Anyway, I won't go into the details of this because it's an explanation like the Sanskrit. But, so Srila Prabhupada in his purport to one verse, he gives an explanation he himself gives an explanation. Then he quotes Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and then he also gives the commentary of Jiva Goswami. And he says that it is necessary, I'll start from before then. Anyway, I'll start there. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and the Vishwanath Chakravarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery. But to the students who are in the line of the disciplic succession, the explanations of great acharyas are quite fit. So by taking shelter of the explanations of devotees of our acharyas, we are able to derive or understand, get even more different new insights from the Bhagavatam itself. Just like Srila Prabhupada, how many times had he read Bhagavad Gita? But he read Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on 241, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, etc., like that, and it changed his life. Because of the commentary he read by his previous acharya in the line, he derived an insight that previously he had not had just by reading the verse. So verse is there, but a point was brought out by a devotee which was otherwise not perceivable. So similarly here, this what's being described here is wonderful that because of your attempt to transcend the pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. So I'm making the point that not only are the pastimes newer and newer, the devotees, by their explanations, they also make the pastimes, they expand the pastimes, and they make the pastimes newer and newer. Srila Prabhupada writes somewhere, I think in the second canto, we read that the Bhagavatam was spoken by Krishna to Brahma in 4 verses, and then it was Brahma taught it to Narada, etc. And it was brought down in this line, and it's become expanded and expanded and expanded. Here we have in the next verse, Maitreya, he's saying, let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavad Purana, which was directly spoken by the great sage of the personality of Godhead, ultimately going back to Sankarshan. So Sankarshan spoke it, Lord Sankarshan, he spoke it to the Sanat Kumars. Then going down the line, Maitreya received it. He's again repeating it. And then we have it in its huge form. And then Srila Prabhupada, he gave his commentary on that. And others, in the typical line, they will also presumably give commentary as well, which is proper, which is needed, actually. So the topics of the Lord are expanded by the devotees. They become more relishable because by, just like there's this verse, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido, Harit Karna, what is it? I'm missing a Rasayana Kataha. Anyway, the second verse isn't so relevant, but by hearing topics of the personality of Godhead and the association of devotees, they become relishable. Of course, they're relishable in and of themselves, but specifically by doing it in association of devotees, they become newer and newer and newer. And we get inspiration in devotional service. So yeah, the spiritual master, he relishes at every single moment. We hear of in Gurvashtaka, we hear of the Apara Madhurya Lila Guna Rupa Namnam, the unlimited Guna Rupa, etc. name, the unlimited name, form, pastimes, etc. of the personality of Godhead. And at every single moment, the spiritual master is greedy for relishing this. So we should come to the stage. This is the stage we're aspiring to come to, we want to come to. And the spiritual master, he teaches us by his own example. And the result of such topics, what is the result? In the second canto of the Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj, he gives one reply to Shukadeva Goswami, Tamo Vishriyate Mahyam Harikta Katayata Katam. He says to Shukadeva Goswami, your speeches are gradually destroying, he induces Shukadeva Goswami to please go on speaking. Why? Because your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, because your speeches are in relationship to the Lord. So one symptom of Krishna Katha is that by hearing it, it's very practical. By hearing it, one's ignorance goes away. One gets increasing enlightenment, it's not just dry words, you actually experience it. Just like there's the verse in the 11th canto, which the Sanskrit is difficult for me to quote, but you, Bhakti Parishano Bhava Viraktir, Anyatra Chaisa Ekakalaha, Prapadyam, what is that? Tushti Pushti Kshud Upayo Nughasam is the relevant part. That one experiences satisfaction in Krishna. How can you tell Krishna consciousness is working? Because you become satisfied. Just like somebody who is eating, he becomes satisfied. He doesn't have to question, am I becoming full? So similarly, if we're properly situated in Krishna consciousness, naturally we'll understand we become blissful by hearing topics of Krishna. We experience this newness is not something theoretical. If we're feeling some staleness in devotional service, it becomes inevitably something may be off in our devotional service. Otherwise, according to the process, things become newer and newer. It's not that things become slack in our devotional life. Of course, we can sometimes enter into a rut, but it's not the fault of the process rather than something we ourselves are doing. Yeah, there's other points, but anyway, they're kind of tangential a little bit. So I'll just end it there and take anything anybody has at this point. Comments or questions? Yes?
You saying Maitreya Muni heard the Bhagavatam from the Kumaras?
Yeah, it's described here. I couldn't get to that part. He not directly Kumaras. He's in the disciplic succession. Yeah, if you want to be technical. So Sanat Kumara, he explained to Sankhya Muni, who then explained it to Parashara and Brihaspati, who is the spiritual master of Maitreya. No, I'm sorry. Anyway, there's a disciplic line. I won't go through it here, but it's in the later verses. He heard it in disciplic succession.
The Kumara Sampradaya.
Yeah, I guess so. Actually, it seems I must be. Yeah,
Bhagavatam coming in the Kumara.
yeah. Actually, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, interesting.
I also wanted to ask, you said Vyavasayatmika Buddhi.
Yeah.
Eke.
Ekeha Kurunandana. Yeah.
How do you say the rest of that verse?
The third line. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that like changed Srila Prabhupada's life. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
241. You can see Srila Prabhupada in his commentary. I mean, he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur a little bit. He quotes this verse. You can just leave it. He doesn't quote directly. He quotes Yasya Prasada, Bhagavat Prasada, and Srila Prabhupada quotes in his purport, echoing the same thing by the satisfaction of the spiritual master. Same thing, and he emphasizes on this point in the Gita. But you can see it's changed Srila Prabhupada's life. If you hear Srila Prabhupada's lectures, dozens of times Srila Prabhupada he will make this point about this 241, and he make this point quite often. That you read this verse in this commentary by Vaishnavana Chakravarti Thakur, and he himself says it gave him a realization. You can see Ravindra Swarup Prabhu, he notes that it seemed to be quite a changing point in Srila Prabhupada's life. He got a very special insight. Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, of course, but nevertheless, he got some sort of special insight there. Because something clicked in his mind that service to the spiritual master is the active principle of devotional service. And then you see, shortly after that, etc. like that, and his emphasis on that. So yeah. That translation is there. I think Guru Maharaj gave that translation that is very popular. He told me something like that, that's like prominent throughout the society. Something like I'll paraphrase his what it says. It's something along the lines of like the service to my spiritual master's orders are my only sadhana, means of practice, and my only sadhya, means of perfection. And whether or not the material world is destroyed or whether it goes on, it doesn't matter. My only duty is to serve the words of my spiritual master. I'm paraphrasing something like that. So Srila Prabhupada read this. It changed his life. So he would quote it very often. So yeah. It's okay? Is that satisfying?
What changed?
I don't know. It's a personal thing, No. It just clicked. It sounds very simple. Okay, well, you just serve the spiritual master. It's very obvious. But something clicks, It's a special realization. I would equate it just like Bhrigu, he relates his own experience with the verses Chai Gosei, Kori Charan Vadan, etc. like this. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he read this, and that by offering prayers to the Lotus Feet of the Goswamis, all the obstacles in one's life, etc., or eliminated, something like that. I'm badly paraphrasing. So he got some sort of transcendental insight into that verse. So similarly, we can presume Srila Prabhupada he had the same thing. Of course, he's already pure, he's already transcendental, but it doesn't stop you from getting newer and newer insights into the verses of Bhagavatam and Gita, etc., like that. So it's a simple point. It's just like we're reading every single time, but sometimes we read one thing. It may be simple philosophy, but it just stands out to us. I'm sure we all have this experience with something like that, etc., like that, to a greater degree, of course. But like that, it's stated. We've read that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. For those who have read offering there's the song. We all know the song as well. That you offer obeisances to the Goswamis, and all of one's that destroys all of Vigna Vinash. It destroys obstacles. We've read it, but there is insight into it that was given. In other words, he had Bhrigu, he derived some sort of insight. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada derives some sort of special insight from that. So we can also take advantage. We may not have that sort of vijnana, that special insight, but nevertheless, we can take advantage of the. He's done the research work for us. We can take advantage of that. So, like that. If you can hear Srila Prabhupada's lecture. You can see him quote this verse. If you just search this verse in Vedabase, and he just put Vishwanath. You see, so many times Srila Prabhupada makes this point in his lecture that it changed his life like that. So, okay, anything else? Okay, you have something more? We have like 20 minutes or so, if we
It's
want.
like not
so.
super directly related to the class. It's kind of a question I probably should have asked a few years ago. For dummy question. But it's kind of like I've always wondered this. But we see all the Shastra, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, it's all in like kind of poem format.
Yeah.
So I always kind of wondered, did everybody like speak poetically back then, or like is this just a way the knowledge is preserved? You know.
So, Guru Maharaj has a class on this point actually. Presumably, no. The exact words that were spoken may have been a little bit different, but they were recorded like that about Vyasadeva. It's just like we have Chaitanya Charitamrita. Are we supposed to suppose that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he spoke in Bengali poetry to everybody? Okay, he's God, he may have done, but are we to presume that the Muslim Qazi in Navadvip also spoke in poetry and every like? No, it can't be taken like that. So it may be recorded like that. We cite that. It's not that it's bogus or anything like that. But the knowledge is, but it doesn't change what's being spoken, or it doesn't take away from any fact. Just like, for example, Krishna says to Arjuna, I spoke the same knowledge to the sun god thousands of years ago. So the same knowledge, the exact same knowledge. Now the words may be slightly different. The exact words Krishna spoke to the sun god may be slightly different. So the exact precise words that were spoken, Krishna can speak. He's one of his qualities is that he's poetic. He's also a great linguist. So he could have done like that, but presumably, and especially for some things in the Bhagavatam specifically, just like we have degraded people in the Bhagavatam speaking as that Vena, we have his words. He's a degraded king. We have Mlechas actually. We have what is that? Kala Yavana, I forget his name, and then he's a Yavana. Yavana means he doesn't know Sanskrit. but we have his words recorded not only in Sanskrit and poetry. So presumably it may be a little different. So there's some class by Guru Maharaj, or maybe a Q&A where he addresses this point, and this is what he was saying regarding that. So, of course, some other things maybe could be. It's hard to say exactly, but yeah.
Fifth canto, those super long verses.
Yeah, that's prose actually. That's not poetry. So it could have been directly spoken like that. That's also fine. Yeah. Is that okay? That's my limited knowledge of that. I forget what that title, that lecture is called. You could probably see by searching in like knowledge base, like poetry or something, like a verse, something about. He speaks on Gita specifically. He makes this point about the sun god. So, okay, anything else? No?
I have one question. The verse says Lokapalaha.
Yeah.
Indicating that.
Protector of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, means. Protector of the world. Mm-hmm. So, Vidura is coming in the line of Pandavas or Puru dynasty. Mm-hmm. I was just curious why it was used. It could have said he's a great devotee and he's serving devotees, so he's making it special. Is there any significance?
To Lokapala, there's always some significance. I don't have any special insight into it. I was wondering that myself. Lokapala means it's not just like ruler. There's a special nuance to that. It's saying like the protector, the protector of Loka, of the world, literally. So my presumption is that it just indicates that those kings were ruling the world. That's my only understanding of that. Or it just, that seems to be my understanding of it. Maybe something else is there. I don't know. I haven't. But yeah.
Sometimes I remember, I don't know if it's correct, sometimes they say that the sages are the rulers of the world, right?
What, as far as Lokapalaha, I've seen it, I looked in Vedabase, at least in the Bhagavatam. Elsewhere is used specifically in reference to Kshatriyas, because the pala, the protection, that protecting aspect, you could take it, You could take it like that. I mean, you could make that statement. It's not wrong to say that a sage is Lokapala because he protects the world by his words, by his wisdom. But specifically, more directly, is used. Its usage in Shastra seems to be more towards Kshatriyas because I mean, Kshatriyas protect that's their duty, you know. So, and also another thing is that I mean, he's coming in. Well, here Lokapala, you're asking about sages. Obviously, he's coming in Kshatriya dynasty. So, it's in reference to Kshatriyas specifically.
And I mean, he's also the son of Vyasadeva.
Vyasadeva, that's also there. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. You could take it like that. It's possible to take it like that. But I don't know. It's you could potentially say it like that. It refers to Vyasadeva. But here specifically, though. Yeah, it's possible. You could say so many different things. Here, at least my like limited knowledge, like Lokapala, here is, I mean, as Srila Prabhupada is giving the word for word, kings are. I didn't look at other commentaries for this verse, so I can't like specifically say, it could be, could not be. Yeah.
One more thing I was going to say was, I think Maitreya's spiritual master was Parashara. No?
Yeah, that's mentioned here, yeah. Okay. I wasn't aware of his line. Yeah, that's mentioned here, Parashara. So, it comes later in the chapter. Okay? Okay, Mataji, anything? No? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.